At midnight, deep in the shadows of the Burkina Faso-Togo border, something felt off. Border Patrol officers noticed an unusual convoy, 47 trucks snaking silently along a deserted back road. No headlights, no radio chatter, just steel and shadows cutting through the night. Officially, the trucks were said to be delivering humanitarian aid, but something didn't sit right. Aid convoys don't move like ghosts at midnight, and they certainly don't avoid main roads. Suspicion turned into alarm. Captain Traoré radioed it in. Within hours, President Ibrahim Traoré himself was briefed. His instincts kicked in. This wasn't a routine smuggling case. Something far bigger was in motion. He gave a single command: intercept the convoy. Assume the worst. Be ready for anything. What followed would become the largest weapons seizure in Burkina Faso's history and the unraveling of a plot to throw an entire region into chaos. The operation kicked off just before dawn. Helicopters roared into the sky. Drones locked onto the moving convoy. Special forces, silent precise, took positions on the ridge overlooking the dusty road. As the 47-truck convoy rolled closer, completely unaware of the trap ahead, the ambush was set. At exactly 4:03 a.m., the lead vehicle was boxed in. Chaos erupted. Drivers jumped out, scattering into the bush. But escape was a fantasy. Within minutes, all suspects were in custody. Soldiers pried open the first truck expecting blankets, canned food, maybe medicine. But what they saw stopped time. AK-47s, M16s, rocket-propelled grenades, anti-aircraft missiles, hand grenades by the thousands. Each truck was a mobile armory. Packed in sacks marked emergency relief, were enough weapons to equip a private army or start a civil war. Captain Kabori was the first to report in. "Mr. President," he said, barely able to steady his voice, "there's enough firepower here to take over half the country." President Ibrahim Traoré didn't flinch. His eyes were steady, his tone cold as steel. "Secure everything. Not a single bullet gets lost, and make the drivers talk." One driver cracked. Trembling eyes wide with fear, he whispered, "They told us it was farm equipment. Just parts. We didn't know. But as interrogations deepened, the truth bled out. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was organized, financed, orchestrated, and it had tentacles reaching far beyond Burkina Faso. Each truck had left from a different location, different times, different routes. They converged at the border only hours before being caught. Someone had coordinated this, someone with experience, power, and money. Weapons serial numbers had been scratched off, but forensic analysts at Burkina Faso's intelligence service weren't fooled. Using advanced restoration techniques, they uncovered the origins: Libya, Yemen, even brand new arms traced to factories in Eastern Europe. Some were NATO-grade, the estimated street value over $100 million. At that moment, Traoré knew this wasn't just about his country. This was an invasion without boots on the ground, a proxy war disguised as aid, a quiet overthrow disguised as chaos, and it wasn't just aimed at Burkina Faso. "This is a war against the very idea of African independence," he said to his cabinet, voice like thunder, "against African self-reliance, against the new Africa." He called an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. The room was silent as the inventory was read aloud. 15,000 AK-47s, 5,000 M16 rifles, 3 million rounds of ammunition, 50,000 grenades, 200 anti-aircraft missiles, 20 tons of explosives. Eyes widened, jaws dropped. The defense minister muttered, "You could invade a small nation with this." But Traoré wasn't shaken. He rose to his feet and delivered a line that would later echo across the continent: "Africa will no longer be a battlefield for foreign interests. We will no longer be tricked into bleeding ourselves for someone else's empire. African unity begins now. The hunt was just beginning." By the second day, the mask began to slip. One of the captured drivers, Jean-Baptiste Compaoré, cracked under pressure. He admitted the convoy wasn't carrying humanitarian goods. It was weapons bound for secret warehouses in Ouagadougou, the final stop before they'd be handed over to armed cells waiting in the shadows. President Ibrahim Traoré listened in silence as intelligence reports flooded in. For weeks, shipments had trickled in across borders. Carefully timed, carefully routed. It wasn't smuggling, it was an invasion in slow motion. But worse, this wasn't a local job. This was foreign engineered. Then came the real bombshell. A businessman named Francois Bonkungu, arrested in the early morning raids, turned informant. And what he revealed would send shockwaves across the continent. We were promised everything he confessed, choking back fear. Money, power, protection. All we had to do was bring down Traoré. He claimed meetings had taken place in Accra with foreign diplomats, businessmen, and intelligence operatives from Paris and Washington. The plot, he said, had been codenamed Operation Restore Democracy. But there was nothing democratic about it. The plan was simple: spark panic with coordinated terrorist attacks, incite protests against the government, use rogue generals and foreign-trained mercenaries to launch a coup, replace Traoré with a pro-Western puppet regime. And the weapons, just the first shipment. The full budget for the operation was over $200 million. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't blink. This isn't just about Burkina Faso, he told his inner circle. This is about New Africa. This is about African unity, about defending our right to exist on our own terms. This is an attack on African self-reliances, and it ends here. He immediately ordered sweeping raids across Ouagadougou. 23 warehouses were stormed in a matter of hours. 17 were filled with more weapons, some still in crates labeled with foreign shipping codes. Among those arrested, retired generals, ex-ministers, and shockingly foreign diplomats carrying forged credentials. Each had one thing in common: fierce opposition to Traoré's vision of a sovereign Africa. And then came the second confession from Bonkungu, this time on live national TV. Trembling, staring straight into the camera, he said, "They told us we were bringing democracy. But we were selling out our country. President Traoré is right. We were traitors." The country went silent, then erupted. Thousands flooded the streets waving flags, singing, crying. This wasn't just a failed coup. It was a turning point. The day Burkina Faso said no, not just to weapons, not just to foreign interference, but to a future written by someone else's hands. From the rubble of betrayal, something stronger was rising, a new Africa awake, united, unafraid. Day 3. The silence broke. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the national stage calm, composed and standing in front of a towering wall of confiscated weapons. Cameras rolled. Microphones trembled. This was not just a press conference. It was a declaration of defiance. "My dear people," he began, holding up a stack of classified documents. "3 days ago, we stopped the largest arms trafficking operation in our nation's history. But this was not just about weapons. This was about power, control, betrayal." Behind him, the truth loomed in cold metal: rocket launchers, assault rifles, crates of grenades enough to drown a continent in blood. Their goal, he continued, voice rising, was to destroy Burkina Faso from within, to replace your voice with theirs. But they underestimated us. They forgot who we are. He paused, then delivered the line that lit a fire across Africa. "We are not just a nation. We are New Africa, and we will never kneel." The room erupted. Journalists from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and African state media fired questions. Who funded the operation? Who coordinated it? Was this backed by Western governments? Traoré didn't hesitate. Some of the weapons come from NATO countries. Some organizers were trained abroad. And yes, there are foreign fingerprints on this. One reporter from Paris tried to interrupt. Traoré cut him off. "Don't pretend this is surprising. This is the legacy we inherited. But no more. We are done being pawns. We are done being someone else's battleground. Outside, tens of thousands gathered in the streets, chanting, waving flags, singing in unison, "Long live Traoré, down with imperialism." Africa for Africans, women danced. Elders prayed. Youth lit torches, turning the capital into a sea of defiance. In one corner, a mural went up overnight, Traoré, holding a torch, lighting the continent. Below it, the words, "African self-reliances." Support surged from across the continent. Mali's leader declared Traoré is not just Burkina Faso's president, he is the guardian of African unity. From Guinea to Chad, from Uganda to South Africa, messages poured in. Heads of state resistance groups, even exiled thinkers, called this a watershed moment. A new hashtag exploded on social media, New Africa Rises. Meanwhile, Traoré's government doubled down. Foreign diplomats involved in the plot were named. Visas were revoked. Assets were frozen. The game had changed. But Traoré wasn't done. "We're not just exposing this plot," he told the world. "We are dismantling the entire machine." This is not just about Burkina Faso. This is about every African nation that wants to walk upright. This is about rewriting history. The narrative was no longer controlled by foreign headlines. It belonged to the people, and the message was clear: Africa is awake. Africa is united. Africa will never be owned again. Day 10. Independence Square. Under the blazing African sun, a massive crowd stood still, watching history melt before their eyes, literally. A giant steel cauldron mounted on stage bubbled with molten metal. One by one, soldiers dropped AK-47s into the fire, rocket launchers, grenades, shells, the very tools of destruction now becoming symbols of rebirth. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward. This, he said, pointing to the glowing metal, was meant to kill our children, destroy our homes, and turn us against each other. But we will not be broken. We are New Africa. We do not inherit fear, we forge our own destiny. The first cast from the molten weapons, a school bell. Every morning, Traoré continued, voice steady, "When our children hear this bell, they will not hear war. They will hear peace, progress, power." Cheers erupted. He then unveiled a national initiative, 100 schools to be built with the revenue from melted weapons, 50 health centers, 1,000 kilometers of new irrigation canals, a new military modernization program built on African terms for African self-reliance. But more than infrastructure, Traoré had lit something deeper: hope. Across Africa, murals of Traoré now stood beside portraits of Thomas Sankara and Nelson Mandela. Hashtags like Us, We're New Africa, and Traoré Rising surged through global feeds. In schools, children began reciting a new pledge: Africa will never be a weapons depot again. International media couldn't ignore it. Even the New York Times ran the headline, "From Weapons to Hope, the African Leader Who Defied the World." But Traoré's final words on that stage silenced even his loudest critics. "They brought us bullets. We gave them books. They tried to burn our future. We forged light. Let this be known: Africa is not yours to manipulate. We are not your resource. We are not your war zone. We are the heart of humanity, and we are awake." The crowd roared. Drums thundered. Candles were lit across the city. The old man wept. A child saluted. A continent for once exhaled. If this story moved, you don't just watch. Comment below. What does New Africa mean to you? Share this video if you believe in truth, unity, and justice. Subscribe for more untold stories that mainstream media won't cover. Because this isn't just history, it's the future. And we write it together.